Hello, Mr. Graves.
Michael?
How are you, sir?
Yeah, I'm all right.
Yeah. Yeah, me too. Thanks for being available for this call today. I had Jeff work on an agenda with me a little earlier today.
Good.
So hopefully you will be able to join us shortly so that we can go over it. You down in the Florida area?
I'm in Melbourne, looking out of my home office window.
Lovely.
Slightly overcast, but still 77, so who cares?
Yeah, you can't complain too much. The overcast just keeps you from having to be able to put sunscreen on the top of your head.
Yeah. Plus I haven't got out yet, so
yeah.
As soon as we're done today, which hopefully will not take us all that long, it should not be an overly complex discussion.
I wouldn't think so.
I have to tidy myself up, get changed, and then I'm on a call with Pfizer for an hour on COVID vaccine tracking, blockchain dispensing management, and then that'll finish at 4:30, and then I am going to Dijon's in Melbourne Beach for happy hour.
Or cocktail, I hope. Yeah.
Yes.
Good call. Jeff, would you mind pulling up that Teams file that we worked on earlier today that has the spreadsheet or the PowerPoint for the deck for today?
Sure.
I've done some edits on it there in the directory, but I'm on my phone at the moment and I have my computer screen up in front of me that I can look at because I'm working on something else that I've been working on all day, but it's pretty close to being done. And Linda should be joining us shortly. Thank you.
It said 5 on the meeting announcement, Michael. Linda, you, Jeff, myself, and
Andrew Cohen, who is joining right now, and he is the new Chief Technology Officer for DFM Data Corp for the past few months.
Right. I noticed in the discussion the other day,
that's just them joining now, John. Go ahead.
Right. I noticed in the discussion the other day, have you appointed a new sales person or
yes, sir.
Modified your sales profile?
Yes, sir, substantially. And we'll go into that in depth in today's discussion, or hopefully not in too deep depth, but enough depth to answer all of your questions.
Okay.
Hey, Andrew.
Hello.
So I believe we have a full pool that is of our steering committee members, and I've asked Andrew to join us for the first 30 minutes of the call today. He has another call to be able to get on in the second half hour of this discussion, but just about everybody on the call knows Andrew except for John Greaves, who's had just few interactions with Andrew, but didn't know exactly what his role was going to be with us. And I've asked Andrew to join us at the beginning of the call for some of the discussions on the topics of the transitions and changes that we've been making.
Yeah.
So Linda looks like she's having a little bit of technical problem joining in and out, but we're going to go ahead and get started. So Jeff, if you could jump on to the next slide, please. Hi, Linda.
Hey.
Hi, Linda.
Hey, guys. Yeah, I was driving around a parking lot looking for a better signal, but I think I've found about as good as I'm going to get. So I can hear you and see you. So
there you go.
Keep my video off to reduce bandwidth. So.
And Michael, I can't tell if it's being recorded or not.
I hit the record button.
It is being recorded.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. So we had agreed previously that we were not going to go through the exercise of spending the time at the beginning of our steering committee meetings reading this, just reference the fact that it's up and that we're all aware of it. There really hasn't been any changes to it, except I did italicize Article 5, Section 1.1 in here in my last edit. You can move on to the next slide, please. So basically what we wanted to do today is do our basic call to order. So joining us today, we have, as mentioned, the steering committee consisting of John Greaves, Linda Getz, Jeff Hurley, with a guest today of Andrew Cohen, joined by Michael Darden, who worked on the agenda with Jeff Hurley. So Everybody present, thanks for being here. Good. Everybody approve the agenda? You want to take a glance through it real quickly? I can talk through the discussion points that I wanted to do, or we can again read through it yourself and then ask any questions before we move on.
Yes, sir. Move on.
Move on.
All good.
Thank you. So,
Approved.
thank you. Jeff, you can move on to the next slide. So we got a couple things that we've kind of had come up here related to contributing members. And Jeff, I may have you go back and forth between the agenda and here as we go forward. But the contributing members, very early on, when I took a copy of the source code from what was being worked on as Block Know-How and was writing the license agreements between the company, we made it so that Block Know-How was going to be the first equity holder in the contributing member side because they're not practicing any of the invention at this point. There's been discussion with Charlie Northrup about, and actually an onboarding that took place this past week with one of the members of his team to participate in the contributing member side of things. We have Symbiont Technologies that has also signed a contributing member agreement with us. We have Mark Montague, who has also signed a contributing member agreement with us and is expecting a consulting agreement for some of his support work going forward. And this past week, we had a young lady named Autumn Bison who seemed to have interest in being one of the first equity holders in the company, one of the first 40 equity holders in the company. And I think we were ill prepared to be able to address the situation of a non-DFM wanting to be in the position of one of the equity holders in the company. And that's one of the main topics for the discussion today, is the fact that we have looked at the scope of our sales efforts to the DFMs, and as we have reached out for the DFMs and their concern for their competitive advantage with their technology becomes potentially threatened, or in their initial vision being threatened of them having the competitive advantage that they've had, that they've not jumped on the approach of being able to have an equity position in this company that is potentially going to round or flatten their spikes. So, Jeff, can you move on to the next slide for me?
Sure.
Actually go back to the term to the table of contents for me, because
Sure. The agenda.
I have at the end of this to be able to talk about the status of sales, but I'm going to kind of pull that up here into the section that we're talking about, because frankly, Andrew and Andy and Neil, all names that are new to John Greaves, are really handling our pivot of our messaging to the community. And I'm going to paraphrase this by saying that the DFM Data Corp mission remains the same, of being a standards body that enables the participation and contribution of each of the members and associate members or contributing members. But we in our previous meeting described the fact that one of the contributing members could be a shipper, and that a shipper that is a contributing member, well, they might really be able to be in an equity holding position also. But we didn't make any provisions for that to take place. And we have this capital raise strategy where, 3 slides down from where you are now, Jeff, and if you can just scroll to it, the intention was to be able to, have DFMs pay $100,000 up front to be able to get their license agreement and
Their equity agreement.
to buy equity, and the $50,000 to be able to purchase a license agreement.
Right.
And the license agreement is separate than the capital raise side, but we have had some of the people that we've been talking to expressing an interest in doing the capital raise side of it, but not wanting to spend $100,000 out of the gate right now. And that would feel better if they could pay as they go for the first year. And I can see that. I can also understand the value of being able to have that consistent revenue coming from those companies over the next 12 months. So, I think it makes sense for us to contemplate as a steering committee if what we had initially authorized as being DFM member shares being either subdivided into DFM member shares and contributing member shares, where some percentage of them would be for each of them, or some other determination that we would discuss. And I was hopeful to kind of bring these 3 points up so that they're in the awareness of everybody on the steering committee, and then let some discussion take place. And I know Andrew's on to be able to also talk about the fact that there's some of our sales opportunities that are related to private labeling and licensing and
John's waving his hand.
No, yeah, John's up next.
You're good, John, go.
Thank you. So this subject has been on our table before, some while back, when
It has,
the
sir.
overarching structure was being created. And my attitude at the time remains my attitude at this time.
Which was to do it.
In the matter of the ownership of the company, no matter by whom, it remains entirely at the discretion of yourself, Michael, not of the parties of the third parties, fourth or fifth parties.
So I get that. The only difference is, John, in this case, the fact that we've described the classification of stock.
Hold still. It still remains a matter of your advising the parties of the first party that you've got, there's three things here. One, I don't care who wants to invest in DFM, and I don't care how they want to invest. All we have to make sure is that an investor coming in without being a DFMer holds class 1 shares. They don't have any different kind of vote. There's still a 1-for-1.
Right.
And a person who comes in and is a DFMer, whether they come in on the installment plan or the money up front model, are class 2. And it's horrible to make them the class 2, but it's a matter of speaking to equity partners as opposed to operating partners. So the mechanisms for doing this are quite simple. Hello, what was her name? Autumn Bison?
Yes.
The name conjures up all sorts of stuff I don't want to talk about, but hello, Autumn. You have acquired 126,412 DFM shares for your injection of whatever, because Michael has determined what a person may pay for a share. I think dollar par was the original formulation. So
It was.
So be it. So if Autumn gives you $112,635, she has 112,635 shares. If DFM user Freddie Smith Freight from Tulsa gives you 73,400 over a year, because that's what you have thought with the sales team as being fair for the size of operator they are and the demand on your model, then they get 73,400 class 2 shares. Now, when the company comes to a vote of any kind concerning the structure of the company, in other words, its corporateness, not whether it buys another Dell rack, or not whether it hires 4 programmers, or not whether it goes and gets JB Hunt a cocktail shaker or whatever. No, straightforward corporate affairs. Then the combined vote of Autumn and Tulsa DFM member is 186,412, if my rough maths came out, vote count. Now, in your corporate articles, you have to say if a share votes as 1 for 1, or if they vote 1 for 10. In other words, so they only actually have 17 votes, or do they only have 2 votes, no matter how much they put in? They are equal in corporate votingness. Now, that would be quite usual. Let's not kid ourselves. That's why you see these nasty equity types, thumping the table and demanding a place on the board. Because even though they own 3% of the equity, the board themselves don't like them, don't want them on the board, get pissed off with the way they're interfering in the company. So my recommendation would be, it doesn't matter how much you put in, you get a vote, because you are you are actually on the board, not this group, the board of a corporate capitalized company with a title and with an intent to make a profit. So all of that said, that's one item out of the way off my agenda. 2, your payment plan over a year model, Michael, absolutely correct. I actually spoke to this, if you refresh the minutes, oh my goodness, 6 months ago, and suggested, but flagged the following caution. 3 months in, they decide it isn't such hot sauce, and they walk. What is in the paperwork that makes it so they can't walk until the full year is out? I seem to recall it's in there. I seem to recall it says you can walk, but only after the term of the term of the term. And the term is in this paper and is noted to be from the 6th of June 2021 to the 29th of May 2022. Cool, that's that covered. So then we come to the third item, which you've brilliantly portrayed in this slide because it's part of the consideration. Can anyone sell their seat and shares? Well, they can't sell their seat because it goes with their shares. So the seat is a redundant remark. What you really want to know is a contributing member. Well, here's the nub of it. Any member, whether contributing or shall we say operating or equity member, class 1 or class 2, may sell their shares to any third party at any time for an arrangement between the party of the first party and the party of the third party, and you can't do much about it. Neither can Procter and Gamble. I want to sell my P&G shares, I can sell them to Andrew Cohen.
Well, we've identified though is that one company gets one vote. So what we were trying to avoid with this is that you didn't get one company buying up other companies that had.
There you go, you see, Michael, because you can't stop that. I'm sorry, there is no mechanism. Procter and Gamble would love, and Walmart and a whole host of other people, if they could stop that kind of planning. And you can't. It's the very nature of being a limited company, a limited partnership, an LLC, or anything where co-equity is a formula. So the best you can hope for is that in recognizing the power of DFM, Michael, here's what I've always said to you, have I not? 51% of the company is not available. It's vested in you. So it doesn't matter how many clubs they get together, right? Because when they vote and they say 16 votes to 1 that something corporate has to happen, and you personally do not approve of it, then you've got to have a cleverer person than myself put a what on earth is it called? I forget. Like a golden share model in, just like what the Koch brothers have. David and whatever name Koch. There's tons of people have conspired to get rid of them. They've even lost votes by hundreds of shares. But hey, guess what? Bad news. You still can't do it because they have that one share. What do you call him? The entertainment mogul. and his daughter, who's 9,000 years old, and owns, is it AMC? No,
I'm gonna say
Network.
one of them died, and her daughter's got it now.
Yes, right. But it's a blocker share. They hate him, but
50% plus one share is enough, Michael.
that's correct.
No, I understand that. I guess my point is here is that from a corporate standpoint, DFM, I personally allocated some of my shares to become DFM member shares. And those DFM member shares now equate to 10% equity of the company, but they're broken down in 2,500 share blocks. And what I'm suggesting is that allocation of that 10% shares for DFM members really should be reclassified, redefined to be for DFM members / contributing members, such that
No. You see, there's the thing, Michael. You see, every so often, you suddenly sound like Oxfam, like some kind of philanthropic charity that is feeding the homeless. Forget that crap. I know you have huge and good intent in your heart with DFM in other areas, but altruism towards a potential investor, whether as a member, as a class 1 or class 2, just doesn't gel. It ain't gonna be. It ain't gonna be so.
So what are you saying, John?
I'm saying actually, I'm saying class 1 members are non-operating members.
Right.
Shareholders, I beg your pardon.
Right.
2 shareholders are operating companies. Can a class 1 buy out class 2s? Actually, they can't unless they also buy JB Hunt or similar, right? And
Okay.
then they may be able to do what Michael dreads. And frankly, don't make no mistake about it. I'm not talking over this subject.
But I think he's saying something else, John. What I think he's saying is should a contributing member who is in a business that is part of the process, but not necessarily a dynamic freight matcher, someone who contributes to the process, wants to buy an equity stake and wants to buy an equity stake at level 1, isn't necessarily a dynamic freight matcher. So they could buy that equity stake.
Yes.
In the company. There's nothing stopping them from doing that. They don't necessarily need the license for DFM because they're not doing DFM. So the $100,000 investment is fine. The $50,000 investment doesn't make sense for them until or unless they become a dynamic freight matcher.
A DFM.
Okay, but what John, I think I now get what John's saying.
Andrew's right in as much as, in fact, he's 100% right. Andrew's right because he's backing up, in effect, what I said. There is a class 1 and a class 2.
Right.
Class 1 don't get a license, but they do get a share certificate.
Correct.
Class 2 buy a license from which they get a share certificate.
So the class 2 is the $100,000 investment and the $50,000 license. That's
Yes,
the class 2.
Yes,
The
sir.
class 1 is the $100,000 equity position, but they are not licensed to do DFM.
No.
And they're not sitting in one of the DFM member share positions. They just invested $100,000.
That's correct. That's
Right.
correct.
And
That
that
is
goes
correct.
to Michael, not DFM.
That's
David.
right.
I think
my
that's the point John's trying to make.
Yes. It's class 1s, it's Michael's money. They're buying a piece of his action. Class 2, the company is allowing a license to be sold for $50,000. That's the company's revenue. $100,000 is not revenue, it's stakeholding, it's shareholding, it's to the benefit of the sum of the whole. And how Michael accrues those 2 sets of 100,000 is a question mark that I don't have an answer to off the cuff because I wasn't kind of expecting this, but I do have some visions and I have some history and I've seen this work before. And there's nothing weird about it. There's nothing strange about it.
No,
It's just a class. I would say that, in fact, Michael, as I talk and I think, and yes, I can do that these days. It's amazing. I come up with this following statement as a statement of fact, if you will. An equity investor holds Class 1 share certificates. A member holds a Class 2 share certificate and a license to use the product. In so doing, you will have to recognize a member's contribution as all of the 150,000 will go to DFM. And here's why. Because they are investing in the company's ongoing operations, not in the company's likely profitability, which is what a Class 1 is doing, or the Class 1 is investing to see if they can get your attention that you will then, in version 7.6 of Andrew Cohen's software development, you will use Corda or Apache or Ethereum or Linux for freight that might pop out of the woodwork, etc. So at that point, they're looking to see if you'll buy their crap. It could take them 3 to 5 years. In the meantime, you could become, in fact, you will become very profitable. So they'll be a shareholder in equity and in the rising price of their stock, which may tempt them to sell it when it gets to $936 a share, for which they paid $1. They'll weigh up their capital gains risk and unload some. And there'll be people who will be wanting to buy it because, remember, to this point, without a board meeting, that's the people who've given you money, both the equity Class 1 and Class 2 members. Without that board meeting, you cannot open up any more stock. The stock you've allocated is the stock available. Ba-bum.
Right. Right. Okay. So you have shed some light on this point for me. Any other questions on it that John didn't?
I have one question on this last bullet. So if a contributing member sells half of their shares, does that split the seat?
Actually, Jeff, you can't sell half of your shares as a contributing member, as a Class 2.
As a contributing member, they don't get a seat, actually.
Yeah. You have to hold the 100 to get the seat. You can't get a seat for 50. Sorry.
Got it. So actually, if they sell half, they lose a seat.
Yes, if they sell half, they're breaching their agreement with DFM.
right.
So they can't. And anyone who called Michael or any one of us or anyone at all and said, Freddie Smith Freight from Tulsa has just offered me half of his shares, we'll just simply go, oh, well, you tell Freddie that he can't do that. And any attempt for you to turn up here this morning and demand your license or a seat will have you escorted out of the building by the Georgia State Police. Have a nice day. Now get out of the way. Thank you. Subject, I am sure, is closed.
I think so.
Subject to Michael enacting the suggestions made by us to him.
I've got to jump off, you guys, because I've got to jump on with Port TMS.
Yeah, go get them.
Okay, good luck on the meeting, and I will see you guys soon.
Good luck with Port.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, so if you can go back to the agenda for me, and we'll just kind of pick the remaining items here to be able to address.
Thanks, Michael.
Yep. So thank you for the information and insight on the contributing member piece. The stock is actually set up correctly to be able to do this now. It's just really I didn't have it set in my mind right.
That's why I made the speech, Michael. I know it is. Yeah.
No, you're correct, sir. And
now a report for the annual a report for annual shareholders meeting. It says, okay.
Yes, sir.
Is it time to have one, or are you contemplating having one?
So it is time to have one. The The previous secretary has resigned. A new secretary has been named. The board bylaws book has been digitized by the new secretary, and there's a few actions to be able to take, but the bylaws identifies that the annual shareholder meeting will take place in the fourth month of each year. And I can have that meeting literally with just the secretary and submit the information to the bylaws book and have it so that it's updated correctly, but it should have a communication from this governing body that just identifies kind of in summary a communication to the record more than anything else, like I have to do for the status of the tech and the status of the sales.
The steering committee are appreciative of the efforts of Michael Darden and others in continuing the solid progress of the company towards eventual profitability and increased activity. At this time, the steering committee finds no issues pertaining to the company's illegitimacy, legality, or technical weakness to be pertinent or reportable under a shareholders meeting.
And we can put your signature on the bottom of that as the chair of this steering committee to submit with the record.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. That's what I was looking for. And the real only other thing that's left on here is us determining a cadence and of our next steering committee steps and any open issues that are remaining for
steering committee's next frequency. Today is the 23rd of April. The steering committee will meet again on the 23rd of June. Unless the CEO or another officer asks the steering committee to meet in the light of an impending disaster.
We're going to try to avoid that
review disaster. Or to review ideas that have percolated up through the working groups that require action.
Which is basically, Linda, exactly right. Yes, that's what I said a moment ago, but I said it a little too dramatically. What a surprise.
John, there is one technical step to take with you and Jeff at some point where he really should go through the onboarding process with you of the application. And it's not a terribly long period of time to be able to do. It would take probably 20 or 30 minutes to be able to go through it. But at some point, there is a place for you to now log in and be able to go and see these things come to life and see the meeting notes and such in real place. So we can get you set up for that when it's convenient.
It will not occur next week. It will, as you know, I made a grave mistake, unfortunately. It's a very positive mistake. But in panicking about the stability of my principal employer, which was known to all of the parties on this call, I did not hide the realities of my precarious position. That I went out and what have you been doing?
So what have I been doing? So the discussion that we have had related to the tech is twofold. There is a command center member voice platform, which is the governance module tool that we've built. And there's a second piece that's called the ATR, the Anonymous Transaction Relay. And the Anonymous Transaction Relay is a pretty sophisticated messaging tool that allows for the entire network of participating virtual machines to be checking their hashes against the others all in very rapid basis.
So it's a bit like federated learning.
Yeah, that's right, sir. It's basically a cluster of nodes where new nodes can be added, and the communication protocol from them to the others is inherent within the rule base. So
okay, thank you.
Very slick about we know it can process millions of transactions a day. We haven't broken it yet. So we're glad to have it, and it's really just going to up now that this weekend, actually on Sunday, we're doing our first stress test to be able to try to break it.
Got it. And the status of sales, what have you done there? You got a
so
new
we're unfortunately not been as successful with our sales efforts of bringing the DFMs into write equity checks for us, and the discussion with them of them paying per transaction at the very beginning has been off-putting to them, where they're like, why would I be paying 55 cents a transaction or $5 a transaction until there is a critical mass of what is taking place within me getting value of this back? And it kind of led us to realize that the shipper side of where the loads are coming from is first connected to the TMS. And the TMS is oftentimes doing the replication of the posting to the DFMs.
Got it.
So by refocusing our sales efforts on the TMSs gives us access to shipper customer loads with a unique global identifier that can be applied at the origin of the load. So we can actually identify what the soft data elements of the load are and how it ties to the hash that's created for the global identifier that it's tied to.
Got it.
So two really good pieces working, doing exactly what they're supposed to be doing. We don't have the stress test on one of them, but there's been an exciting development here in the state of Georgia. The Georgia Department of Transportation has put out a industry association meeting where they wanted to be able to have Georgia Department of Transportation NISG coded vendors that
Yes.
were qualified for working in this space to come to a meeting that took place on Tuesday. We went and listened. They have $2.6 billion a year for the next 40 years to invest in technology around transportation, and they want to know some good ideas. And they have a 5-year strategic plan, but they're going to hear a whole bunch of ideas, and they need to be able to float those through a governance of collaboration and of buy-in. And hey, guess what? We've already built one of those. So we have positioned a response to be able to go to them and say, look, you're about to open a can of worms that's got a whole bunch of ideas that different people are going to like different things. And I got a tool to manage that. And we can help run that for you as a vendor straight out of the gate and be your provider to be able to manage the ecosystem of those concepts turning into deliverables. And the second piece of that is the messaging engine, where we can describe to them that we can move all these millions of transactions per second, and that the capability is there for us to be able to utilize that engine for anything across the DOT's requirements.
Got it. Thank you.
Yes, sir. So those are the things we're working on right now. They're actually putting the RFP out on that on May 5th is when they're putting out the RFP.
Super.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. I propose that we are adjourned.
Yes, sir. Thank you for your time and insights today. It was, as usual, a pleasure to be able to get your direct input after, thinking about these things for a long time.
I love spending time with you guys. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here. Have a nice day.
We appreciate it.
Much appreciated. Yeah.
Thanks,
And
John.
I second the motion to adjourn.
Thank you very much, Linda.
John, I'll